Michelle, we had a shakeup in the AP top 25, in the top three to be exact. Alabama is not the big dogs like we kind of hinted at last week when we talked about how they were struggling without Bryce Young, and they did that this past week. But we have new top dogs in the AP top 25. We got Georgia, and we got the Ohio State Buckeyes. So we're about to play a little back and forth in who we think is the top team in college football right now. And normally, I probably would say the Buckeyes, but I'm going with the Georgia Bulldog, and here's why. They are the reigning national champions, and they needed that respect. They came into the season, people overlooked them like, oh, this was going to be a one-off year. And what they show versus Oregon, no, this is the same defensive powerhouse team that they were last year. And so far, they've only had one test, and they're going to get some tests at the end of the year, especially in November with Tennessee, Mississippi State, and Kentucky. But for right now, they are taking care of business. They just beat an Auburn team after a close game versus Missouri, so they're showing you they can bounce back. We were looking for this from Alabama, and they didn't really bounce back after struggling, especially without Bryce Young. And with Ohio State, they haven't played anybody yet, but they have some big games coming up, had a fairly easy schedule. I think this was their first road game this past week, so it's a lot to see from the Buckeyes. And if you was to ask me my unbiased opinion, Georgia is the best team in college football right now.
I generally agree with you, but for the sake of not making this the Georgia Bulldogs show, I am going to make an argument for the Buckeyes at this point. Yes, they haven't really played anyone. Their one road game was against a very, very bad Michigan State team. And so Ohio State hasn't really played anybody, but it also doesn't look as vulnerable as we've seen Alabama and Georgia look so far this year. They've had some close calls. And at this point, going into week 7, Ohio State actually now has the best chance to make the playoff, according to ESPN's playoff predictor, and that's at 81%. That's over Bama and over Georgia, and those two teams have largely been at the top in that category. But I think we can't overlook that Ohio State's offense has really seemed to have found its rhythm at this point. It's one of the best in the country. It's averaging almost 550 yards a game, and CJ Stroud really seems to have gotten more comfortable in and out of the pocket. And it's not, you can't overlook the fact that Ohio State has two standout running backs in Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson. They're an incredibly dynamic duo and so much fun to watch. But my thing is, and to your point, when you look at Ohio State's schedule, what they've done so far and where they're going, aside from a struggling Notre Dame team at the beginning of the season, and that team seems to have found its footing, Ohio State really hasn't been tested. The Big Ten West is bad, and everyone else outside of Ohio State, Michigan, and Penn State in the Big Ten East are pretty bad also. So I look at Ohio State's schedule. You've got Iowa, Penn State, Northwestern, Indiana, Maryland, and then close the regular season out with Michigan. I don't think Ohio State is really going to be tested all that much. I think it could really have a problem going on the road to Penn State. Happy Valley is a really, really difficult place to play in, and that's where the Buckeyes could really see their first true test. But if the Nittany Lions can't actually put something up, I see Ohio State cruising through its schedule and eventually coming down to probably a head-to-head matchup against Michigan for who will end up being the Big Ten champion.
Yeah, the scary thing about Ohio State is they still haven't really gotten their number one wide receiver, Jackson Smith and Jigba, into the chemistry of things. Marvin Harrison Jr., my correction, is blossomed into a star wide receiver like his father once was. And Henderson has some injuries as well. So, this offense, we haven't even seen at full strength. But, like you said, we haven't really seen this team play anybody tough since Notre Dame in week 1. And, it took a while for that offense to get going. That's when Smith and Jigba got hurt. So, we might not have – we probably haven't seen the best of Ohio State offense just yet. The defense is good. But if that offense gets to clicking, you think about those two power running backs and those plethora of wide receivers, they just had 2 get drafted, and it seems like they got 4 more who could get drafted. They could be the number 1 team at the end of the year, but for right now, I'm going with the Georgia Bulldogs.